news of the coronavirus first came, my aunt didn't believe it. She said it was a scam by the Chinese and that the Dems were in cohorts with China. That was 2 months ago. Nowadays, she most of the time says nothing. That is probably not unrelated to the fact that she's now dead. She died a month ago, gasping for breath. She was suffering from asthma, and somehow she'd misplaced her inhaler. The funeral, if indeed it could be called that, was somber. We all had face masks on, and the service was brief. Other people wanted to bury loved ones that had died from COVID-19. Not my aunt, though. My aunt died from something uninteresting. Plain old asthma. That day was the last day we stepped outside as a family for a while. Self-isolation with your family can be a bore. By the end of the first week, we'd generally grown tired of looking at our faces. My mom didn't want us watching TV. It was spreading too many bad vibes, also known as fake news, she said. Too much bad vibes ruin a good mood, and a good mood is great for your immune system. In case you're wondering, my mom doesn't have a medical degree, but she subscribed to a Karen-esque channel on YouTube, so she has a lot of these hot takes. On the Friday of the second week of self-isolation, I woke up in the middle of the night. Right in the corner of my room, I felt someone looking at me. It was so eerie, so scary, so unnatural that I shivered. I turned on the light, and to my surprise, no one was looking. It was a bad dream, I thought. I get that fairly often. The next night, I woke up, and around the same time too, but this time it was to a knocking sound at my window. It was dark, so I couldn't really see who was doing the knocking. I put on a light and I heard something or someone drop from the ledge of my window. I was so scared that I had to call my elder brother into the room. He informed me that I was probably having a nightmare. I wasn't so convinced, though. In the morning, I told my family members about what I had seen the previous night. They all laughed at me and said I was projecting my nightmares into real life. However, the next night, they weren't laughing. This time, there was no knocking sound. This time, it was a breaking in sound. It seemed someone or something was breaking into my house. At once, everyone woke up and we went downstairs. Our windows were shattered, but we didn't see anyone. We searched and even called the cops, but nothing. Not a single thing. The next night, I couldn't sleep. I just knew that something was up. I knew that something was going to happen. And something did happen. It was 2 a.m., and I started hearing sounds. We'd fixed our windows, so I was sure if something or someone was to enter, that it'd make a lot more noise than that. I went downstairs and wandered about idly. I saw nothing, and decided to go back upstairs to my room. And there, right on my bed, I saw a man eating some leftover junk in my drawer. I was so scared that all I remember were flashes of action. In a second or two, my brother was in the room, and he was dragging this man off my bed. In 2 minutes, my dad was in my room as well, and they were tackling this man to the ground. However, he proved too strong for them. It was like he had the strength of 4 men. What even made it worse was that throughout the struggle, he was spitting at my elder brother and dad. After a short while, he was able to escape their grappling, and he immediately threw himself at my room's window. The window shattered, and he was off. The next day, we had to get iron bars for all the windows in the house after the police's advice. For me, self-isolation was going to be a good time. I was tired of school already and just really wanted some alone time, you know? I just wanted to sleep and laze about all day. That was really all I wanted. I didn't care in the least that I was going to be in quarantine with my parents. They are great people, and they generally try not to disturb me. I live with my mom, dad, younger sister, and grandma. We call her Nana because she's sweet and cuddly and has a smile that makes your stomach float. Nana tries not to disturb anyone, and whenever she spoke to you, she usually only had great things to say. When we heard that COVID-19 was especially dangerous for old people, we knew that we had to go to extra lengths to protect Nana. She was about 80, and we sure as hell didn't want any of us infecting her. That's why we decided to stick to the lockdown rules. Mom and Dad worked from home, so it was pretty easy to do. One day, Mom went to the supermarket. She was super decked up with face masks and all that. Sadly, she forgot to wash her hands, and when she got home, Nana was the first person she spoke to. After 3 days, Nana started to complain of heartburn. The next day, she started coughing, and we knew something was up. That week, she died from complications arising from COVID-19. We all cried. I especially bawled like there was no tomorrow. The night of her funeral, I decided to sleep in her room. I know it's weird, but I really just wanted to feel her presence one last time before her room was fumigated. I know I was being irresponsible for exposing myself like that, but I didn't really care. That night turned out to be one of the worst nights of my life. First off, I couldn't sleep, and then our electricity cut off. But my parents were fast asleep at the other end of the house, and I don't think they noticed. I also didn't want to disturb them. They'd had a tough day. When the noises came, they were soft and sounded like chanting. I used my phone's light to look around, but I couldn't find the source. Then a thunderstorm started. But despite the noise of the rain thundering hard all about me, I could still hear the slow chanting. It sounded like a song, but was eerily very unlike one. Soon enough, my phone died, and I was in the darkness alone. I then tried to leave the room, but to my shock, it was locked. I tried all I could to unlock it, but it just wouldn't budge. And every time I tried to face the door, my back would burn with the sight of someone. It was like someone was looking at me, but I just couldn't figure out who. By this time, lightning flashes were illuminating the room, and in one corner I could distinctively see my Nana's frame. It looked exactly like her, and in another moment, it was gone. I started banging on the door violently. This was no longer a joke. The chanting, slow and soft and eerily melodious, continued. The thunderstorm continued, the feeling of being watched continued, and I continued banging on the door. Soon, I heard a click on the other side. It was my dad. He told me that he'd locked the door from the outside because he didn't know I was in there. I told him of the chants inside the room, and he went in to check. He came out with a contraption that looked like a wind vane. He told me that it was something that Nana put outside her window on the ledges. Whenever there were heavy winds, the contraption made a melodious sound. I asked him about the image of Nana that I'd seen, and he told me it was nothing. I still don't believe him. Some say that quarantining with family is the absolute worst. I don't agree. I think staying alone and having to quarantine by yourself is actually the absolute worst. I live alone, and for the past 2 months, I've had to endure the problems that come from working from home and living on your own. It was even worse for me because my house is right on a secluded part of the town. I rarely get any visitors, and even when I do, they've mostly lost their way and are looking for a way to get back into town. One day, after being stuck at home, I decided that I would do some exploring. I was bored out of my mind and decided that the best thing to cure myself of boredom would be to explore my very secluded street. To make my exploration more fun, I decided that I would do it at night. Maybe I'll find something interesting, or maybe someone interesting. Who knows? Not me. That night, after dinner, I strolled out and went down an abandoned footpath. After walking for a while, I got to an old rundown factory. At least that's what it looked like. The factory was a story building, and in one of the windows I could see a light flickering. Was someone living there? I couldn't know for sure. I could only check, and I decided that I would. I walked up to the factory door and knocked. Almost immediately, the light that was flickering went out. I heard a few creaks on what I assumed were stairs, and almost immediately I heard a falling sound. I knocked again, and I noticed the door was actually open. I peered in the factory and discovered that it was indeed run down. The moon was out, so I could see some things. What I assumed was the ground floor had a few dead machines and chairs scattered all about. I took my torchlight and stepped in. By this time, I was already pretty spooked, but I didn't want to run away scared. After all, I came for an adventure. After stepping into the building, I expected the doors to close behind me. They didn't. Instead, something heavy and rubbery crashed into my face. In a moment, I was down on the floor. I looked around and it seemed someone had hurled a tire at me from across the room. I was shaken and then thought that I was clearly not welcome. I exited the building and went to my house. That was enough exploration for a day. But apparently the night was still young and a lot of things were still going to happen. When I got home, I made sure to lock all the doors and all the windows before heading to bed. But as you may know, windows can be broken, and doors generally pose no trouble to someone or something with a sledgehammer or the strength of a bear. When the bang came, it woke me up immediately. I was up from my bed in a moment, and I grabbed my phone to call the police. After making a frantic call, I walked into my living room to find my door totally thrown off the hinges, like a bear had gone through it or something. I was so scared that I ran into my room and locked the door. Soon enough, the police came and did a thorough search of the area. However, they found nothing. Till now, I don't know who or what destroyed my door and threw it off the hinges.